when these KANU MPs come to you with money, it is your money. You pay taxes, so take it.
Yes.
Don't shun it. Take it. Now, what you've just asked, the question you've asked, gets to the heart of now what I refer to as the eventual consequences of something that people begin without realizing how it's going to morph and become a complete monster. Now, this is what happened. The voter prior to that didn't look for handouts.
Yes.
If
when the chief called for a meeting,
people went. If an MP came to visit, in fact, most members of parliament were considered religious people because the church communities embraced them. They were members of the community. They are people who everyone related to. But the moment the money element came in, then if you didn't have money, and you see it just grew, and the amounts that were being demanded grew, and the amounts that were being spent grew. So here we are. It's now entrenched and it's normal. So we stop talking of hundreds of thousands, we start talking of millions. Nowadays we talk of billions.
And soon we'll be in trillions.
Yes.
So it was entrenched by
its politicians.
And also it's a move from, you see, like you're saying, in the KANU days, if there was going to be a meeting, the chief would mobilize the people. So it wasn't that it's not a negotiation. Funga duka iko mkutano.
And everyone knew it was, or whether it was on a Tuesday. Chiefs meetings were known, the days were known, the times were known.
And the day Mheshimiwa is coming, the MP funga duka, Mheshimiwa is coming. Yes. So it's sort of like, top to bottom, and it's an order. You must attend this meeting.
Yes.
And then now starting to, because of trying to fight, this guy is able to mobilize a meeting using the chief, and you are trying to fight him as an opposition person, and you've already been branded. You know you'll never get a permit to hold a meeting, so you go to the rally, and in order to demonize the person, you say, kula pesa yake.
Yes.
I'm a daughter of a chief, of a chief of Kenyatta's age, kind of. And I saw people bring gifts to my father.
Yes.
They were not demanding.
No.
When he calls for a meeting, people would come and they didn't even have phones or anything. They used to use a horn, There was a high place in the community where you would go blow the horn and people know there will be a meeting tomorrow. And they come. And some bring even gifts to give it to him. It was not about, you have called us, so I want fare back, I want lunch, I want ABCD. But somewhere along the line, as City is saying, we messed it up.
No, the politician introduced it. I mean, the politician himself has morphed into somebody who actually started off to help people. Because in those days, there wasn't much in terms of salaries. No. So really, if you take it further to the representative of the people at the local level, what we call councillors, those time it was voluntary. You could have a job that you do, but you volunteered and you are a councillor. Essentially, these were people who wanted to see the communities change and benefit.
And leave alone that.
Yes.
It was never about you stepping forward and saying, I want a seat. People would even approach
you and say, come and take up this position.
Or if you are a young man, your father.
Yes.
They tell him, let us have this young man. And not even to lead. They were saying, aenda achunge ng'ombe kitu kama hiyo, akwe shepherd.
Yes.
We want him to be a shepherd.
Angalia maslahi yetu.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they would look, before they approach, they would check the family line. Are these people who are good people? Are they integral? Are they hardworking? Are they what? Then they just approach but now, some guy comes from nowhere. You don't even know whether they have ever seen leadership.
Or if there's madness in their family kind of thing.
And when he steps into the shopping center, people start looking at the diameter of the car, the tires of the car. Look. I mean, what has that got to do with how you perform? If you come with a Prado, and another guy comes with a V8, and another one comes with, I don't know what. They will follow the one with a huge car.
The bigger the car.
The bigger the tire.
The bigger the tire.
The bigger the car.
The bigger the following.
So you can see already the what do you call the values system.
It's actually called conditioning. Because over time, people have been conditioned to more or less quantify. It's like that car gives them a value proposition that they can look at. They say, oh, kama hii ni mguu kubwa, because where I come from, people also say, unapeleka mguu kubwa, okay? So you've been quantified. The figure, to drive this, this equals, okay? If you come with a Pro Box, you will come with a Pro Box. And you may find yourself alone with your Pro Box. So,
And your relatives.
yes. And even your relatives may just support you, but doesn't mean they'll vote for you.
Yeah.
Let's
So,
take a
You
break.
see now, that issue
Yes.
is where the voter could help themselves, but they have been corrupted in the mind, I think. And so they become
the worst, best
Their
enemies.
own worst, best enemy.
Yes.
Best worst enemy.
Yes.
28 minutes to 8. Let's take this break and come back. We'll talk about, okay, so what is this about we as voters? What drives us? What motivates us to select a leader? Is it about the money? Is it about the wealth of the person? Is it about the questions of their integrity? We have very many MPs elect who have court cases. Okay? Are we considering that? Is that a factor, or does it not matter at all? Mheshimiwa Grace Kiptui, the first woman rep of Baringo County and a very good listener of the show and a contributor, is here with us in the studio to talk about this. Good morning. Robinson Talam says, big up Wakili, we felt your leadership as Baringo people. Continue doing the good work. Well appreciated. So, City, are we our best worst enemy? Really? I mean, when it comes to all these things, how we treat a leader. Because when a leader comes and all we're looking at is the size of the tire of their car, what we're looking at is how much money they're giving us, not even wanting to sit down and listen to what the message they have is. Unatupatia nini, my friend? Twende kazi yetu.
No, we're talking about a culmination of a process in my mind. We're talking about how it is, and a trusting people believe in a process, whatever that process was, and believe in the way the individuals in that process ought to conduct themselves. And then over time, because of that trust, the word condition which I brought into the discussion, you see a change coming into play, and that change involves money in one way or the other. So that the values that we associate with the politicians also change. See, politicians by and large, could almost be described as selfless in a sense, because yes, it was a job, but it wasn't one of these jobs where you were going to get wealthy. No. It was a job where you were going to change. Now, one could argue that at independence, the needs of the Kenyan people were different from what they are now. And I'm saying not really. The needs haven't actually changed that much. But when you then have people who get into politics, they don't start off or with a track record of having been involved in or participating in the community's affairs like Mheshimiwa here. No. They start off as businessmen, or they start off as bureaucrats who have made money in whatever they are doing, and then they go into business and they're going into parliament. So essentially they're business people. So when they get into parliament, the business mindset is what we then see. The relationship then that the MP has with their people is transactional. It is no longer service. They talk service, but that's not what you see. Now, that particular situation simply just morphs into a far uglier form of what one saw earlier on, where you find the individual who is supposed to be the citizen who is being represented even stops being a human being. You've been profiled into a commodity that is used and tossed here and there and pushed wherever it is that would suit this particular individual. And I dare say that's actually where we are right now. Because if a politician was talking about people and believed that these are people whom they're representing, they would conduct themselves rather differently, if you ask me. But they don't.
Mheshimiwa, I mean, even just based on what CT is saying, and if you look at times when it wasn't even called civic engagement or it wasn't called that. We did have, and correct me if I'm wrong, where, I mean, just like you're saying, members of the community coming together to do things that they ought to have done. Members of community coming out and selecting a leader and saying, look, this is what we need, and we are matching our need to an individual that we see would be able to carry that responsibility. Do we see a distinct difference between that which happened in those times and that which is happening today? How can we get the voter? How can we get the electorate? How can we get people back into that place or back into that way of thinking that it is a corporate effort? That it cannot be the leader who comes, gets your vote, gives you some notes here and there, and then goes into the annals of the National Assembly, for example, and then does whatever they want.
Thank you, Oko. I think for me, it should be a national conversation. The city is saying we're in a very bad place. And our value system, Kenyans will say they are going south when they actually are going north. Yeah?
They will knowingly say they're going south to deceive you?
Yes.
Or they'll be saying they're going south without knowing that they're actually heading north?
They may even know, because like laws in parliament where we pass them, yeah? There are so many laws, almost covering each and everything.
Yes.
And you will find people raising motions, one law on top of another. Implementation, zero. And we talk of values which we wish we would adopt, but we don't. I will go to the community campaign on a platform of what should be actually my role, but I don't actually mean it. The minute I'm now elected, I'll go for my biashara. And I use, whenever I see somebody who is raising their head, I go and cool them down with something. That kind of thing to maintain myself.
Yeah.
It has become so competitive. It has become something which has...
Hey, excuse me. Do you know of any courier services I can use to send my parcel up country?
What? I stopped sending parcels because my people weren't receiving them. I actually wait till it's time for me to make that trip back home to carry everything.
Gosh, now what will I do?
Not to worry. If you want to send a parcel, we are introducing the all-new Standard Courier Services, courtesy of the Standard Group PLC, with efficient and flexible services 24/7. Call us on 0793 599 684 to send your parcel wherever you are, countrywide. Standard Courier Services. Timely, excellent, anywhere.
The only way to live your best life is to create a balance between work, love, and play.
Smoking shisha and releasing things on your smoke like a Subaru. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. And you want God to give you a man who has a mission and a vision.
You may create an illusion of, because he's younger, he's interested in me or he likes me, but he's using me.
Text the word adult to 22840 to get the latest clips from Adults in the Room directly to your mobile phone. SMS adults to 22840.
The Adults in the Room.
Standard Group's Farm Kenya initiative is the umbrella entity for all agriculture-related channels, activities and investments. The media platforms under the Farm Kenya initiative include the Smart Harvest Weekly Pullout in the Saturday Standard, KTN Farmers TV, a 24-hour agribusiness TV station, Maisha Kilimo, a weekly agriculture show on Radio Maisha, AgriTalk on SpiceFM's morning show The Situation Room, and Grind na Agribiz on Vibes Radio morning show Morning Vibes. Find us online at www.farmers.co.ke, an integrated website that creates and aggregates agri-content, hosts a digital marketplace, and wide range of agri-data. Other platforms include specialized events such as the annual Mkulima Expo, quarterly Farmers Kenya Breakfast, and dedicated social media platforms at Farm Kenya 254. Farm Kenya, working to secure your growth.
Spice up your life.
The following takes place between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m.
When you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to
to steal. The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return it and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislature are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi Lokop is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well. No, ni mtu wa Jeshi Lokop.
And everyone knows. Okay.
Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, takes a break today. But don't you worry, normal programming will resume as soon as possible. In the meantime, stay tuned to enjoy pre-recorded conversations with some of our past guests, reflecting on the big issues of the day with penetrating insights into the realms of politics, policy, business and culture. Feel free to share your feedback at SpiceFM KE across all the social media pages using the hashtag The Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation will be right back.
Patrick Adara, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you again on the show.
It's good to be here.
Yes, after the election. Has your ink dried off, or was it pulled off, or was it... You still have the ink?
I didn't vote, so...
Opening statement.
Patrick. I've been always open. I didn't bother too much.
Why?
Well, my reason is basically that I think there is too much emphasis that we put on elections. I think that what really matters is what happens in the years in between elections, and not really the election itself. The election is just a device for appointing politicians to power. You know, it benefits politicians. It's not really an exercise for us. You know, and I think it's more what we do to hold these people we elect to account in the 5 years that are there. That's more important. That's not to say voting is bad. You know, whoever wants to vote, I always say, yeah, fine, go ahead, do it. You know, but I think we've put so much emphasis on sort of exercising your democratic right on election day that to some extent I feel like we kind of de-emphasize the real work of democracy, which is in between elections.
Holding them to account.
Explain that a little bit more, the in-between.
Well, when you, whoever it is that you elect to power, you know, the expectation that there'll be what quote unquote good leaders or they'll deliver their promises. I think our history shows that that's not the case. You can't rely on it. You know, you've got to push them to do it. You've got to stop them actually going contrary to the agreements that we have in our constitution, our expectations that we have for them. You know, we always see every time we put people in, they very quickly start trying to roll back our freedoms, our opportunities, etc. You know, and the way I think of democracy is not so much as a system for electing rulers or for appointing rulers. It's a system for people ruling themselves, so people participating in their everyday decision making. You know, and I think that's what we need to be pushing for. You know, where the things that matter to you, you know, you don't wait for them to be delivered by a politician. You know, it's actually you take up a stand and you go out and you push them to actually do it.
So do I hear you to be saying that instead of the slew of promises that politicians make every electoral cycle, the sort of leader that perhaps one ought to look for is the sort of leader who campaigns by seeking to strengthen the power of the voter?
I would say I don't look for leaders. I don't think we should be looking for leaders.
What should we do?
These people are people we give jobs. So their jobs are to represent. Their jobs are to articulate policies, essentially do what we have hired them to do.
But
I don't think for me that is
leadership.
No, I don't think
But
so.
is representation not leadership?
Not really. An
What
MP is just an MP. It's just like, I mean, if I asked you go represent me in some forum, I'm not asking you to lead me. In fact, it's the other way around. You should follow my lead.
You've determined to demean my position this morning.
No, not really.
I see you. I see you. But your point is well made. But again, so that we don't dwell on semantics,
right?
In all honesty, even if we appoint, we collectively decide, have we then not surrendered, if only in small part, some of the things that constitute our rights to this person to represent us?
No, we don't surrender anything to them. These people are there to do our bidding.
Really?
That's what we hire them to do. They're there to do our bidding. And that's my point. In fact, to go back to the whole issue of elections, is we hire them to do a job. The act of hiring, for me, is not as important as whether the jobs actually get done in the 5 years and how we can hold them to account to it. And then more importantly, we are not giving up our rights,
our sovereignty,
to make decisions, to be consulted, on the things that that matter to us, and I think that's where our focus really should be.
If I stick on that point, Gathara, if you're saying that the act of selecting this individual who will do this job is not as important as holding them accountable. Right?
Yes, as pushing them and participating in the
right,
process,
in what you're saying. So then where is the importance of the who? Of the who does the job? Because, I mean, you could pick anybody then to just do it. And then, because what you're saying is then that you can now push a person, you can mold a person into getting them to do the right thing. So from what you're saying is that it doesn't matter who gets into the position, doesn't matter who that individual is. It can be anybody. So long as then now you do this important activity of between the selection periods, molding and pushing and holding this person accountable into what they must do.
I think it's not immaterial, but it is not the most important consideration. I mean, if you look at how democracy was run, actually, by the Greeks before, they had a system called sortition, which was basically a casting of lots, over who would rule, and the idea, I think, behind that is that if we are saying people can rule themselves, then whoever it is you put in there should be able to, you should be able to mold him, as you say, to do your bidding. You see, it's not, for me, it's not about electing a ruler. That's not what I say. I think democracy is about. And another thing is, when we focus on the who, yes, if you get a guy who doesn't want to oppress you, to take away your freedoms, then you probably have an easier time. But the fact is, you're not always going to get that guy. A corollary to that you can think of is this argument guys have always had that all we need is benevolent dictators. And you get a benevolent guy, you're fine, you're good. But if you don't get a benevolent one, you are in real problems. And so for me, it's actually much better to focus on how you are able to hold people who have power to account, rather than to be too sort of focused on who they are. There's an American chappie called Wendell Phillips who said that the people who are elected to power are the necessary enemies of the people. That just the fact that they wield power, they become the people that then you've got to fight. So it doesn't matter whether he was a nice guy before. Once he's in there, as we have seen actually in our own experience in Kenya, all these good guys we keep voting in and then they turn out to be monsters.
But this narrative of leadership, it's something that we ourselves seem to talk about, and we seem to forward it endlessly. So does it therefore mean that when one is chosen from among us, what they then go and do is portray what it is that we actually expect.
No. First, they really do what we expect and what we want, which is then why we need to hold them to account. And secondly, if you look at elections, and this is across the world, not just in Kenya, they rarely produce people who are quote unquote representative. MPs tend to be in the main tend to be wealthier, better educated than the populations that they are said to represent. Many times when you and you can look at this, as I said, across the world, it's the same. They very rarely look like the guys who they say they are going to represent. And so when you say that when they are acting there, they are acting in the same way as I would, etc., I would question whether that's actually true.
What I'm actually saying is, consider why it is those who elect them choose them.
Well, for a variety of reasons.
Yes, but that's
not necessarily meaning that those people, if you elect an MP like Babu, who's known for shooting DJs in nightclubs, I don't think the idea is that
Gadara, I thought there was one incident of one DJ who was shot.
Well, by him.
Yes, but when you say shooting DJs, it's like his pastime. He goes from nightclub to nightclub looking for DJs to shoot.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the fact that he goes and shoots a DJ in a nightclub,
yes,
how is that something that that you can say that it represents what people of Embakasi want?
Okay.
Of course not.
So in 5 years' time, is this the one thing that that would say?
No, my point is, he
It
goes
can't
there.
be one incident that then people would use to say it represents them.
I'm using it as an illustration to simply say that the idea that people in power, when they act, that they are always acting in ways that represent us is not true, And that's what I'm disputing. And I'm saying that many times, in fact, I would say the majority of times, when these guys go into power, they start acting in ways that benefit them, not us, And that is why then we've got to be quite clear that it's not just about, it's not a fire and forget sort of thing that, we put you in power, then we'll see you after 5 years. The actual job is in between those 5 years. And that's
so your focus is on the accountability.
On the accountability
but then I put
and
it to you,
participation.
Gadara, that accountability starts at the very beginning. Accountability starts with vetting the candidate. Accountability would start from that point, from looking at the person who's presenting themselves as a leader, accounting them, holding them accountable for their past deeds, looking at their character, judging whether they have the capacity to represent you properly, and then giving them the mandate and then holding them accountable for the next 5 years.
And I wouldn't disagree. I mean, that's fine. What I'm saying is that aspect of holding of selection is less, to me, is less important than what actually you do in the years that they actually wield power.
Okay.
Because what they'll tell you before you they get into power, they can have track records, they can have, all the things that you will use as measures. But once they start wielding power, lots of that goes away. Think about 2002. We had people who had been detained by Moi. Think of people like, was it Meru governor?
Kiraitu.
Yeah, Kiraitu Murungi. These are people who had bloody track records, And then 2 years after he's in, he's telling us go through on investigations. The very people who exiled John Githongo were the people he had been in trenches with. Martha Karua, when she was declaring Edward Clay persona non grata, these are people with records. So if you say that all that matters is this vetting thing that we do, once they're in power, all those bets are off.
So are we saying, therefore, that what we have on the pedestal and what we are now judging is the effects that power has on people?
Yes, the effect actually that the system that we have has on people and what it is actually designed to do. In a very large way, to a very large extent, what we inherited at independence. But again, this is not about blaming colonials. It's just understand my argument. What we inherited at independence was a system for stealing. The whites did not come here to be our friends, to develop us, or whatever. They came to steal our stuff, And they created a system for it. They created a government to enable them to do it. And we inherited that system. And we failed or refused to reform it. The people who got it kept it intact. In fact, what's his name? Kisumu wrote a very interesting paper in 1982, where he basically argued that we tried to impose at independence a liberal constitution on an authoritarian colonial structure. And what happened was the structure didn't change. It was the constitution that changed. That system remains still today. We are trying to impose a new constitution from 2010 on it, and already we can hear with BBI, etc., people are trying to change the constitution, not the system, So I think we have to be aware that what we are doing is we are taking our very bright people in our elections, very good people, and feeding them into a rotten system. And that system is designed to corrupt them, and that's all we keep. That's why we keep ending up with rotten fruit.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Standard Group's Farm Kenya initiative is the umbrella entity for all agriculture-related channels, activities and investments. The media platforms under the Farm Kenya initiative include the Smart Harvest Weekly Pullout in the Saturday Standard, KTN Farmers TV, a 24-hour agribusiness TV station, Maisha Kilimo, a weekly agriculture show on Radio Maisha, AgriTalk on SpiceFM's morning show The Situation Room, and Grind na Agribiz on Vibes Radio morning show Morning Vibes. Find us online at www.farmers.co.ke, an integrated website that creates and aggregates agri-content, hosts a digital marketplace, and wide range of agri-data. Other platforms include specialized events such as the annual Mkulima Expo, quarterly Farmers Kenya Breakfast, and dedicated social media platforms at Farm Kenya 254. Farm Kenya, working to secure your growth.
Hey, excuse me. Do you know of any courier services I can use to send my parcel of country?
What? I stopped sending parcels because my people weren't receiving them. I actually wait till it's time for me to make that trip back home to carry everything.
Gosh, now what will I do?
Not to worry. If you want to send a parcel, we are introducing the all-new Standard Courier Services, courtesy of the Standard Group PLC, with efficient and flexible services 24/7. Call us on 0793 599 684 to send your parcel wherever you are, countrywide. Standard Courier Services. Timely, excellent, anywhere.
The only way to live your best life is to create a balance between work, love, and play.
Smoking shisha and releasing things on your smoke like a Subaru. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. And you want God to give you a man who has a mission and a vision.
You may create an illusion of, because he's younger, he's interested in me or he likes me, but he's using me.
Text the word adult to 22840 to get the latest clips from Adults in the Room directly to your mobile phone. SMS adults to 22840.
The Adults in the Room. Spice up your life.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
No, this wheelbarrow, how can you give people wheelbarrow? His party symbol is an umbrella. Is he distributing umbrellas in McQueen?
Have you been told if we don't lock between 10 to 4, this is what we're saving?
You try and call them, the same person who was in your house every day, because they know you are influential and you will give them votes. Call them after 1 month and see if they'll pick up their phone.
Don't tell your member of parliament that you want him to come and build a school, you want him to come and do a hospital. That is not the work of the member. Now that we have devolution in this country, these resources should go to those devolved units.
You have to have strong, independent institutions. And you have to have police who has the right to take the biggest town in the country and question, why did you do this and that, and send them to court if necessary.
Joel in Kericho, good morning.
Salama sana Eric, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama kabisa. Mbunge wako ni nani?
Anaitwa Silvanus Martin, hapa ni Ainamoi.
Silvanus Martin, Ainamoi.
Yes. Sasa ile juma namwambia yeye nini? Amalize aende. Asante sana.
That's it.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. The Supreme Court judges led by President Martha Koome officially began hearing the presidential petitions before it. The court has listed 9 issues that have to be addressed, including whether the commission tallied and announced the August 9th presidential results in accordance with Article 138(3)(c) and Article 138(10) of the Constitution.
Number 5, whether there were unexplained discrepancies between the votes cast for presidential candidates and other elective positions. Issue number 6, whether the IEBC carried out the verification, tallying, and declaration of results in accordance with the provisions of Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10) of the Constitution.
Now, the Supreme Court judges struck out the appointment of lawyers retained by IEBC Deputy Chairperson Juliana Cherera and her 3 colleagues who differed with the chairperson of Chebukati during tallying of the presidential results. The court ruled that it will only recognize lawyers retained by Chebukati for the commission in a ruling delivered by Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Muilu. The 7-judge bench said that the commission will be represented by Senior Counsel Githu Muigai, Eric Gumbo, and Kamau Karuri.
We have now been called upon to give directions and to resolve the question of legal representation of the IEBC. We have considered the pleadings, the record, and the brief statements by counsel. It's our considered view that this court cannot deal with the issue or any dispute as to the legal representation of the IEBC as an institution in these petitions. It is not the business of the court to determine who represents the IEBC in whichever formation. There is an internal issue which must be resolved by the IEBC, its commissioners, and other internal organs. This court will not be drawn into this dispute in these circumstances. We've considered these arguments, and as a result, we allow the application dated the 29th August 2022, that is to say, the notice of appointment filed by ISA and company advocates is struck out. The 4 commissioners are at liberty to deploy and utilize the services of Senior Counsel Paul Muite and Isa Mansour advocate if they deem it necessary in these proceedings.
The Supreme Court of Kenya now wants the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission to provide access to election infrastructure that was used in the August 9th election for scrutiny and review. The Apex Court made the order in light of applications made by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Martha Karua in their prayers. Raila and Karua told the court that the IEBC systems had been infiltrated by unauthorized persons and were therefore not secure so as to deliver a free, fair, credible, transparent, accurate and verifiable election. As per orders issued by the Supreme Court judges, the election agency is required to avail partnership agreements with its technical partners, list of users, trail, and admin access to provide clarity on the IEBC systems and their usage for review and verification, subject, however, to any security-related issues thereof.
On the question of supervised or read-only access, the ruling was specific. It is not read-only access. It is supervised access. So when you send your IT people to the servers, the IBC will understand it is supervised access, which is quite different from read-only access, which was the 2017 situation. So please allow them supervised access, which has a different meaning in IT language.
Among others, the Supreme Court judges shall provide the Azimio team with copies of its technology system security policy. Now, the Supreme Court has allowed the admission of affidavits that were filed at the registry after the required timelines for the presidential petition seeking to overturn President-elect William Ruto's victory. In a ruling read by Deputy Chief Justice of Mwilu during the status conference, the affidavits were allowed on condition that the presidential petition is a weighty matter and they will play an important role in serving justice to all involved parties. She, however, indicated that those addressed in the affidavits will not submit written responses but will orally respond during hearing, which kicks off today. This is News. I'm Dennis Asada. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
You've had the luxury of living for 50 years and you cannot still explain yourself. Surely. Oh my God.
The reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Oh, okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No. It's about shipping up. You know my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the ship in the bathtub? Or
the ship man?
Emmanuel Talamu used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a ship. His classmate raises a hand. Teacher, are you talking about the ship or a ship goat?
Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, takes a break today. But don't you worry, normal programming will resume as soon as possible. In the meantime, stay tuned to enjoy pre-recorded conversations with some of our past guests, reflecting on the big issues of the day with penetrating insights into the realms of politics, policy, business and culture. Feel free to share your feedback at SpiceFM KE across all the social media pages using the hashtag The Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll be right back.
We have a guest in the studio. His name is Mike Ondonye. He is a senior lecturer for communication at the Kabrak University. Dr. Mike Ondonye, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Asante sana for joining us this morning. Feel free, feel welcome. Yeah. That's a hot seat, but okay. It's okay. It's cold outside. Yeah, so anyway, being hot is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
You're a columnist with the Standard as well, and your articles appear like today. There's the column that you've written on page 14, the opinion page of the Standard, political chessboard, what Ruto should do to make all Kenyans feel safe in his hands.
Yep.
Previously, you've written other articles. There's one that you had written a couple of months ago, moons ago, and you said, whoever Uhuru endorses will lose the 2022 poll, and here is why.
Yeah.
And you went ahead to seek to explain why. Another one later that you'd written about politicians craving for a return of a one-party system. So let's start with this one. Whoever Uhuru endorses will lose the poll, and here is why. Uhuru endorsed Raila Odinga.
Yep.
So what reasons did you have for predicting or for opining that whoever Uhuru endorses would lose?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Latif, and also Spice FM for welcoming me, first of all, in this studio to discuss about that. And I think we'll you will realize the political chessboard has been there for since 2020 January actively, and there are a lot of things that I have written, and I was in most cases critical to Azimio, trying to offer what I can call advisory on the things they are supposed to do. First of all, I'm a political economist of media and communication. So I'm not a political scientist per se. And at the same time, there are things that I see from that perspective, from the political economy of communication. So in that particular, I think I did that column when during that time, it was not very clear whether Uhuru Kenyatta was going to endorse Raila Odinga or anyone. But there were some signs that he was to do that. But understanding the way politics works, I was able to know that there is what we call the burden of incumbency. And I remember when I did that column, most people, even analysts, did not understand me because I was simply using one factor, the issue of incumbency. Is it important? Is it something that we can say if the sitting president endorses another person, especially when someone has served 2 terms and they are going out, are there possibilities that that person is going to make it? And I used one actually analogy. I said regimes are like tea bags. Power is like hot water. Once a regime comes into power, it is like a tea bag that has been dipped in hot water. They lose flavor with the people. And putting it in another way, politics is about power and influence. Once you are outside power, you have a lot of influence. But immediately you come into power, you lose influence. And that is why you cannot have power and influence at the same time. So my problem was actually the incumbency. Going by the way the situation was, the life of Kenyans, the economic factor, and trying to see how is it going to be possible that the president will endorse someone and not be seen as a project. And it came to pass, because if you look at the reasons I gave in that particular column, I was very much convinced the only thing that Uhuru could do if he wanted maybe Raila Odinga to be president was to sit back and not to come at the front and say this person is the one. By doing that, actually, he loaded Raila Odinga with the problem of incumbency. And the last thing I can say is this, and I have stated it severally. The only way Uhuru Kenyatta could ensure that Ruto does not see the presidency was to endorse him. That was the only trap. Yeah.
So he bugs him with that incumbency.
Exactly.
City.
Actually, the good doctor has argued his case very well. Because incumbency actually does have baggage. I want to add on to the baggage that he speaks of. The real baggage in my mind is what he mentions as power. When you're on your way out, it is clear you're not going to be doing anybody any more favors in the future. So you really don't have power.
Yeah.
So what you say is of almost little consequence.
Exactly.
They know. So they would rather gravitate to the person they think would have the power. And then, given our politics and given the variables that we constantly deal with in our politics, the one thing that we speak of is really how it is there are misdeeds within our politics. But even as we speak of it, we never really speak about what really happens to our politics, because most of it is shrouded in secrecy. You think, you hear, you've been told, but you're not sure. People go to court, you get tidbits here and there, but you're not sure. So all the time you're in this flux of, did it happen or did it not happen? Questions arise, and those questions are never, from the time of Kriegler, those questions are never responded to. So now the real baggage that comes in is, you come into an election, and already you have the baggage of mistrust.
Exactly.
You feel this thing, is it really going to go the way we think? And in summary, what it is, we don't believe that our votes, remember what we're talking about, the 7.7 million who didn't vote. They seem to be saying, we don't really think our voting actually counts. There are people who are going to decide which way this thing goes. So why should I bother counting? Now, that one. How do you get people out of that cocoon and get them to say, you know, folks, your vote actually does count and it can change things?
Looking at what you call the burden of incumbency, Dr. Ndonye, and then saying this is not something that is peculiar to Kenya.
Yeah.
It is something that is seen around the world. Many would say when Obama, endorsed Hillary Clinton and then she came out to lose. So are we saying then that being in the office, you have this power, you have the power. When you are leaving, the power then hands over to influence?
Okay, thank you for that question. The thing is this, leaders are placed into leadership by the people. Before you get into leadership and before people place you into leadership, what you need is influence. Because what they transfer to you is power. Like on 9th August, the sovereignty that we have, we as the people, through our votes, we handed it with leaders. And now, that immediately they are sworn into office, it becomes power now. With the strike of their pens, without consulting us, they can make policies. They can make things that will affect our lives. So that power, when you are there, actually cannot help you, first of all, because what you need is influence. And that is why when you are outside the power, you are influential. That is why if Raila Odinga is not in power, he will be able to call for a rally at Kasarani, and people will come. Uhuru Kenyatta cannot call for a rally. He needs a pen from his band, and things will work. It means he has the power. But the other person has the influence. He has no power.
Okay.
Exactly.
So prior to power, you have the influence. And there's a reason why I'm asking this.
Exactly.
So should you then vacate the office, do you then get your influence back?
If you vacate the office, if you assume an outsider character like Ruto did, which was actually a kind of a deceptive kind of an outsider. He is inside, but he is outside. He lost to the people, he had no power. And that is why he was able to amass influence now as a spokesperson of the people. Because if you have power, you lose.
You're answerable. You're the person responsible.
With the people. Exactly. And that is what they could not see. Because once you don't see that in politics, it does not work. Whether it is in global north or in global south, it cannot work. Yeah.
Angela Merkel's choice flopped.
Yes.
Exactly.
The same thing that we're seeing across the board.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're seeing, I don't think we have many examples of where it would have worked in the reverse, right? Now, since we have these examples, we can see them. Why would anyone then make a decision about who they were going to endorse while still sitting on the seat of power if clearly everywhere you look, the opposite has happened? Exactly. People who are surrounded by advisors, people who are surrounded by example, people who are surrounded by experience, why would you still go ahead and do that?
First of all, let's understand this. The reason why Uhuru Kenyatta had to support Raila Odinga, Raila Odinga was a weapon. We have to understand that. Raila Odinga was to come in as a weapon. Uhuru Kenyatta, I don't think he was interested in making Raila president. I don't think. He was using Raila Odinga as a weapon to teach Ruto a lesson. Whether Raila Odinga saw it together with his advisors coming, it is upon them. And I did a lot of writing trying to even, I still did another column on what stands between Raila Odinga and the presidency. That was the title.
So it was...
And it was a weapon, number one. Number two, remember, there are things that we need to understand because Azimio is a shake of flesh and thistles. And this is how it is. Azimio brought in politicians and activists. I still did a column on that. You cannot mix politics and activism. They are as far apart as the earth is from the sun. They cannot share anything.
Let's start with the first point.
Yeah.
Go a bit further. So if, in your opinion, Uhuru Kenyatta was using Raila as a weapon, was it against or for William Ruto?
I think you can argue from both sides. This is a Freudian kind of an argument here we can draw. Number one, it benefited Ruto. I still did a column on that. You see, the political chessboard has been analyzing all these things from all corners. That Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga were building Ruto unknowingly. I remember that was actually on a Sunday review. And so we can argue maybe he was conscious.
How were they building him unknowingly?
Either consciously or unconsciously. The Uhuru Kenyatta's satisfaction was to see someone coming to support him and helping him
running government smoothly.
Run the government and make sure Ruto is not closer to the power.
Okay.
Whether now, how it was to benefit Ruto now, whether it was conscious or unconscious, we don't know. But what we do know is that Ruto benefited from that fallout.
You know, you asked a question about the status quo when it relates to how people endorse, supposedly pass on influence from one leader to the other.
Yeah.
We actually do have on record people who've done that and done it quietly, stealthily, and has worked.
Yeah.
Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki didn't jump up and down and endorse anybody. But if you looked at what was happening at that time, he had endorsed Uhuru. He did not say it. He did not mention it. You never heard him doing anything that you could overtly see. But he had done precisely that.
Exactly.
Now, if you look at, we like giving the example of the American election. You look at Biden and the election that he had. Now, the person who had endorsed Hillary Clinton, who was Obama, endorsed Biden again. And in this instance, Biden actually became president.
Yeah.
Okay? What am I saying? I am saying this. Sometimes we characterize certain situations in politics and we want to encapsulate them in a certain idea, and yet the whole issue is a lot broader. For instance, what is it that makes people vote the way they do at the time when they do? If you look at American politics, the mantra that very many of their politicians and presidential hopefuls have is they want to make America great. They may say it differently, but they all seem to say so.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at Trump, Trump had one huge benefit. He looked at how American industry had moved manufacturing to China. He did not need to tell people a different story.
Yeah.
He simply said, you know something, these guys took your jobs and took them to China.
Yeah.
The optics were clear. You didn't need to be a clairvoyant, or you didn't need to have studied some esoteric science to understand it. Now, in this country, the narrative that propelled someone like Raila Odinga to prominence is the same narrative that we now refer to as the hustler narrative. Same. It's just called something different, but exactly the same. So the question I would ask is, those who are in Azimio, how did they allow the person they were competing with to capture a narrative that their leader had held for so long and had been the leaders for so long? Because the narrative that had been now repackaged by the opponent resonated infinitely better. And yet their leader had been the person who had that narrative for the longest time. Now, this is politics. So you ask, what on earth were they doing? Or were they doing something? Or the question is, one question leads yet to another question, it leads to another question, and in my mind, there is no easy answer. Have I gone off on that tailspin that I sometimes go to?
Where do you find yourself? Where you are? What do you see around you?
Has the shrubbery changed?
Are we still on Earth? You know, if we go back to the idea and the concepts of influence and power, the beauty of discussing those two concepts is the dialectical nature of it. Because there are those who say they're synonymous, but actually they are not.
They are not. Actually, they are binary oppositions.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are not. You see, influence doesn't necessarily come with force. Power tends to. Because with power, your options are limited. Influence tends to allow you to make a decision to go along with it. That's why we say it's persuasive. Power is more demonstrative. It's like you are given options, do or don't at your own risk, more or less. Influence is, well, you know, you have the leisure and the luxury to think about it and to decide. And that, as you correctly put it, is determined by, let's say, for instance, someone calling a rally. But the thing that I found interesting between these two things is, if I look at the two candidates whom we've had, Raila Odinga and William Ruto, it's odd, but they both seem to have both variables. They have influence and they also have power. And I'll say why I'm telling you this. When you call for a rally and there are throngs of people, yes, it's a clear sign of influence. But the power that I'm speaking of is to actually have people who follow you closely and they are determined to follow you irrespective. Now, someone can call it influence, but I'm saying that it translates for me into power because it's that following and that throng that now gives you this ability that I'm referring to as power. You are able to do something with it.
Exactly. And exclusively, because power, especially political power, that comes with an office, it gives you exclusive rights and it gives you permission and a leeway to exploit. You have the power to exploit. And in most cases, who are you exploiting? Your subjects, wananchi. And that is why when you have power, you lose flavor with wananchi because you have that ability to exploit them without consulting them. And you see, there is something I've mentioned in my today column there, that according to Machiavelli, we know the prince.
Niccolo
Machiavelli said this, that princes can be put in power by the people or by the nobles. And I have said there, maybe Raila Odinga had decided had realized from 1997 he had trained the people and they had failed him. He had this time decided to try the nobles. And I said, whatever you do with that information, it's your business.
You know, Daktari, since you mentioned Niccolo Machiavelli, let me refer to someone else who was a great influence to Machiavelli.
Yeah.
It's called Caesar Borgia.
Yeah.
Caesar Borgia was the legitimate son of Pope Alexander. Okay. Now, in his writings, he mentioned, those are the days when Italy wasn't united as it is. There were princes all over this place.
Scattered,
every fiefdom and chiefdom had a king. Okay. Now, one of the things that he was known for was putting things together and he was what you call a serious political strategist.
Yeah.
But he mentions that among the things that he found most perplexing was having planned one such machination and having considered all odds, there is one little thing he had not considered. That on the day he was supposed to enact that particular process, which he had worked on, and he was pivotal to, he fell sick. And in falling sick, the whole scheme collapsed.
Crabbled, yeah.
What I find is that he is speaking to how it is, consequences that are not only beyond you, but are unknown to you, can actually come in and wreak havoc to the best well-laid plans.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like the role of chance can favor you, and something that seemed very remote is suddenly brought to your doorstep, and it arrives, and it is now yours.
And we call it a blessing.
Yes.
27 minutes to 8. Let's take a break. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Dr. Michael Ndonye is a columnist with the Standard. He writes the political chessboard, which, for example, there's an opinion piece today, what Ruto should do to make all Kenyans feel safe in his hands. He had previously said that whoever President Uhuru Kenyatta endorses will lose the 2022 general election. And now he's here to say, I was talking about this based on things that, we just observe around the country and around the world. That's what we're talking about. Let's take this quick break, take a look at the traffic and the weather, and then we'll be back. Today is the 19th day of August, 2022. Tomorrow is the 20th day of August. On the 20th of August, 3 years ago, that's 2019, SpiceFM went on air, right?
Born.
This is the date that SpiceFM was born. It was as a response to what Kenyans were longing for, a radio station that would bring back throwback hits from the golden era of music, and also just cleaning up the airwaves, having mature, intelligent conversations. And that's what we've been doing, and that's what we've been having over the last 3 years. And we thank everybody who's been with us throughout this journey. It's not by our power, not by our might. But by the support of our listeners and the Spirit of the Lord.
We know it is cold, but Cold Stone Creamery has hot deals for you. This month, enjoy cups of rich and creamy ice cream, delicious ice cream cakes, and fresh oven-baked cakes at amazing prices. Visit any of our stores in Nairobi or Mombasa and indulge in your favorite treats. Cold Stone Creamery, the ultimate ice cream experience. As we evolve to farming methods that will greatly improve our agricultural sector, we seek to adopt technological practices that are more viable for our ecosystem. For those in large-scale to small-scale agro-ventures, the Standard Group PLC through Farm Kenya will host a Poultry Daily Expo and Mechanization Open Day, bringing public and private stakeholders together to exploit avenues that would greatly impact the agribusiness sector. The expo will highlight the theme Sustainable Poultry and Daily Ventures for Livelihood Improvement in Kenya as we try to transform the lives through improving the industry. Join us at the Ndumberi Stadium, Kiambu County from 8th to 9th September starting 8 a.m. To book a slot as an exhibitor, contact Caroline on 0723-803-601 or email cnyandieka@standardmedia.co.ke.
Introducing Boatele, County 49, a rich county where the leadership has failed its people. Justice and peace are elusive while violence sweeps through the county. What will be done to save the people of Botele County? Watch County 49 as our heroes and villains clash in an exciting tale of corruption, greed, love, and redemption. Every week on showmax.com.
Digger Classifieds is an all-in-one platform to find jobs, buy and sell motor vehicles or properties, to pay tributes to the special people in your life. www.digger.co.ke, the one address in Kenya that everyone loves to visit. Digger Classifieds. Unfold a whole new world of greater experience with the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 and enjoy the Get More Done device that's perfect for on-the-go productivity. Trade in your old device with Badili for the multitasker's ideal phone and get 25,000 shillings over traded in phone value. You can also get it now and pay later with Aspira at 0% interest for 6 months. So pre-order yours today and get a fold cover with S Pen, Samsung Care Plus and 24 months warranty. T's and C's apply.
Spice up your life.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
No, you know, this wheelbarrow, how can you give people wheelbarrow? His party symbol is an umbrella. Is he distributing umbrellas in Machiavelli?
Have you been told if we don't lock between 10 to 4, this is what we're saving?
You try and call them, the same person who was in your house every day, because they know you are influential and you will give them votes. Call them after 1 month and see if they'll pick up their phone.
Don't tell your member of parliament that you want him to come and build a school, you want him to come and do a hospital. That is not the work of the member. Now that we have devolution in this country, these resources should go to those devolved units.
You have to have strong, independent institutions. And I mean, you have to have police who has the right to take the biggest town in the country and question, why did you do this and that, and send them to court if necessary.
Joel in Kericho, good morning.
Salama sana Eric, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama kabisa. Mbunge wako ni nani?
Anaitwa Silvanus Maritim, hapa ni Ainamoi.
Silvanus Maritim, Ainamoi.
Yes. Sasa ile juma nampambia yeye nini? Amalize aende.
That's
it.
Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, takes a break today. But don't you worry, normal programming will resume as soon as possible. In the meantime, stay tuned to enjoy pre-recorded conversations with some of our past guests, reflecting on the big issues of the day with penetrating insights into the realms of politics, policy, business and culture. Feel free to share your feedback at SpiceFM KE across all the social media pages using the hashtag The Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation. Will be right back.
We have one guest in the studio. We're waiting to be joined by a second guest in the studio. Before we introduce the guests, let's hear the day's proverb.
Today's proverb is from Angola, the country of Angola. Don't despise the nut. One day it will be a palm tree.
Don't despise the nuts. One day it will be a palm tree. Okay.
I said, don't despise the palm tree. One day it will produce a nut.
Which will one day
be a palm tree.
Okay. Okay. This is from the country of Angola.
Angola.
Okay. What do they speak?
Portuguese.
Why?
Because they were colonized by the Portuguese.
Why can't they speak their own language?
They do have traditional language.
Yeah.
But the official language is Portuguese.
Why? Anyway, what is their Kiswahili?
It's called what? I'll remember in a minute, I'll tell you. But for now, see how it's this. I'll tell you in a minute. I know it's on the tip of my tongue. You know how that thing is on the tip of your tongue and then it just disappears?
Yes. Yes. Consult your mind, your brain a little bit as we introduce Newton Babior. But Newton Babior is an author. Newton, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the Situation Room.
Thank you. I always watch this show.
Always.
And I love to watch this show.
Uh-huh.
If there's one show which keeps me balanced, it's this one.
Balanced?
Yes, because I think there's a lot of balance, and all the discussion which always come here, they keep you thinking. Like what the quote he has just said. It keeps me thinking. I think I'm the palm, I'm the...
You're the nut.
I'm the nut.
Wow.
Yes. It keeps me thinking, just right there. Yes.
So one day,
yes,
you'll be a palm tree.
For sure.
Newton, what do you do?
Babio Newton is a hustler.
Eh?
And
so you're in Kenya Kwanza?
For sure. I am a supporter of William Ruto.
Okay.
And being supporter of William Ruto does not mean you should be in Kenya Kwanza. You can support him from home. You can support him in a small ways. You can support him by emulating how he's doing his things. These days you don't have to know someone in person. You can, like now we stream things from YouTube. City Muga is somebody we haven't met so much, but every time.
But you have a relationship with City Muga.
Yes, we have a relationship. I have actually. It's called what? The one person you just see and you admire, and you see. You watch. This is something you watch on your sitting room, right? This emotional is called what? There's a way, and that's what makes journalism become a very interesting thing.
Okay. Sorry, I cut your train of thought. You're telling us you're a hustler. I'm sure you do not mean hustler in the sense of your political affiliation.
No.
Okay.
I am a businessman. Yes. I do constructions. One of my latest businesses, there's a business finally I did there in Kisumu. The container business. You heard of it? It had a lot of
those clinics.
It was a container shops which were to be placed in Kisumu town.
The ones near the locals?
Yes, they were to be placed all over town.
Or the ones near the Coca-Cola place?
Yes. They were to be placed all over town. So that it was a private partnership between me and Kisumu County.
It was a PPP.
Yes. So I was funding it and running it for 10 years. But unfortunately, those people say that in a day I was earning 4 million. So they were asking if the governor is earning 1 million shillings
a day,
how am I going to? How is that one going to?
How can you earn 4?
Yes.
But were you earning 4?
I had rolled out half of that project and I was earning 2-point-something million
a day.
But it was a good project. I've actually seen.
What was the project?
It's, put it this way, using containers as a business premise. Instead of putting up buildings, you have containers. So you have like a mall full of a container mall. So every business that you can think of is there. If it's a barber shop, if it's a wine and spirit, if it's a restaurant, they're all there, but they're containers.
Actually, Latif, what was happening, Kisumu was restructuring. So when Kisumu was restructuring, people had been removed from the town. And there were a lot of restructuring which was going on. So when I saw that thing, I felt that was the right time to bring the idea. So the idea was to bring people back in a very structured manner. And then after people were given spaces, I had an idea of I'd talked to a certain microfinance bank, which was going to give these people loans. So there was a certain special card which you were being given. So when you had that card, you could go to that microfinance and get a loan up to 200,000 shillings. But when I did this thing for like 5 months and it was working so well, a certain politician came and told me that I was going to deny them to get people who would attend their rallies in 2022.
You see why we talk about those power purchase agreements being strict, right? You put in a 2 billion shilling project and then it's a political thing. It's the same kind of thing you're talking about.
So
here.
this
Come
guy-
up with
this-
a brilliant business idea.
the-
You sign a contract, but that contract has ways in which someone can just come and walk all over it.
So this person told me that, you know what, if this project work, you are going to make people so busy, people are going to be very employed. The ripple effect is that you are going to create an environment where there is no idlers, there is no one who is going to attend the rally. You know, now in Kisumu, if you call a rally which starts at 10, at 9 it's already full because there is no job. There is no company there. So we wanted to try to find a way of how to formalize that informal sector.
Did you have a contract?
This thing was advertised on newspaper. I won the tender. I signed. I do not want to talk so much about the matter because it's before court.
Okay.
But one thing that I know is that this country, there are people who don't respect contract or laws, which they create their own. So that is one of the business. I exported that idea to other counties. I went and did a very good project there in Kakamega. In Kakamega, I did not face any opposition. I went, had a conversation, did that thing, left it. The county is the one which is running it. But in Kisumu, the problem was that Babior Newton actually was brought up there. They saw me there. They know my parents. My parents work in Juakali there. So they are feeling that, it's like being arrested. Then you are saying, why are you leaving this jail of poverty? Why can't you just stay with us?
Stay there.
Yeah.
You also write.
I write. I write books. And in writing books, I have created a lot of connections. So this is how it works. Like I wrote Oparanya's book, which is coming also, or I wrote Raila's book, right? So from that point is where I met Oparanya, I met Joe, I met Manu Chandaria, So when I'm writing to all these people, they are paying money, and they pay top dollar, I may say. It's money which come from maybe 5 million to 7 million shillings to write one biography. So I can say that this is a hidden part, which is not so many people know that, that one. So I take that money, I reinvest it, maybe in real estate, I buy a house like that, because I have learned that being at this age where we are in, from 30 to 40 years, it runs so fast. It runs so fast. You don't always have time because you are very energetic, but you are so much involved in so many things.
Okay.
If you concentrate in wrong things, you may just be, you will click 40 when you have no resources, and that is when life starts. So you need to be really aware of things around you. So
you've written books about Raila Odinga.
Yeah. Yes.
And others. Let's start with the Raila Odinga book. When did you publish? When was the book released?
It was in 2017. The book was called The Raila Conspiracy. Secrets Behind Denying Him the Kenyan Presidency. I actually launched this book a month before election, just at the same time I have launched this one. And I can remember when one day I met Raila Odinga and he asked me that why have I decided on that title. And I told him that unfortunately I don't think if you are going to win this election, this one is so much predetermined. As a business person, I think you are really losing a lot. Me, I just felt he's losing money on something he was going to lose.
Okay. So had you approached him to write this book? Had he approached you to write this book? And then were you in constant consultation with him over writing later?
Okay. There are two ways of how, when I read small books, of how leaders rise. Some leaders are being nominated on the table. Some rise on their own. And some they say have been sent by this prophet, like David was sent. When I felt that I wanted to write, I nominated myself. It was my own idea. And it's just like Standard newspaper here. If Standard newspaper puts Raila on the front and say why Raila is winning, that is Standard media, right? So I took it as because I love writing. I wanted to write something sensational about also this person. And it's hard to write truth sometimes. Very hard, because there is a lot of opinions. But I just had to write that one because when I wrote the book, I approached him. I told him, I've written something here. Can you read it?
So you approached him after you wrote the book?
I wrote the book.
Okay. Is this a biography, or is this a biography of events that took place around his life?
Okay, when he gave me an opportunity now to interview him is when it becomes a biography. But before I gave it to him, it was a biography of events.
Of the events.
Then there are two types of biography. There is authorized biography, and then there is unauthorized biography. So if you look at that Raila book, you will see it is written authorized biography, though he did not agree with so many things that I wrote there. He did not agree that he was not going to be president in 2017. That was a hard fact to him. And I told the people who are editing the book with me that is my opinion. And actually, I did predict that was going to end in Supreme Court. It did, right? And actually, he didn't become the president. It was very difficult to contest with an incumbent who is in power, who knows what power is, who has unfinished business. I think that is something which in Africa people tend to wish away, but it's something. It's very hard to compete with incumbents.
So would you say then the hallmark of this authorized biography now was that election that essentially was lost? Is that the thing that folks are centering around when reading this particular book?
The book has, I have read other books which were written on Raila Odinga. Raila is somebody who is an enigma.
There's a book by that.
Yes. Actually, Raila is a statesman. He has inspired all generation. He is somebody who is, though us we were born in 90s, but people who grew up in his generation like Muga, that mentioning that Raila, name Raila, is just like he's somebody. In Badejo defines him as fragility providence. That is how Badejo defines him. So Raila is somebody who he exists his space very well in the history, and for somebody who want to write history or who want to train in writing history, must start from discussing him, Kenyatta, Odinga, and that. If you read those 4 books, you know the history of Kenya. But you did ask me a question. I think you may come again.
Yeah, so I was saying, so in this authorized biography, was the center or the hallmark of it this election, which you said you predicted that he did not win? Was that what everything was centered around?
No, the book it had some good research work from the 90s, what my political opinion about 90s. Though I was not born in those years, I have to concede that. But I feel that if Ford, the party, never got split into 2, might be that one will have changed the political game in Kenya. Might be Odinga will have become the president, and with Odinga being the president, Kibaki will have become president earlier. It might be Raila, that generation will have emerged earlier in 1998, that when we were dawning in 1992, he will have become president earlier than that. So there's one point where Kenyan politics got stagnant. I think it's in 1990s when Moi decided that now I'm going for the last term. I think there was some stagnation there, and it stagnated the generational change. But all in all, when he left the space, the political development that took place after that in 2002 brought change, and I think things happened at the right time. Kibaki being the president in 2002, that was a milestone for us. We need someone who is going to bring that Kibaki feeling. I was a young boy, but I felt like there is actually an opportunity to grow in this country, because my parents are commoners. My father used to, when I ask him something when I was young, he tells me that the government has taken all the money because there is campaign. I don't know if it still happens. So I used to ask my
You don't know if it happens or if parents are still telling their kids that.
So I used to ask my father that which kind of government is this which can take all the monies because there is campaign and then return them after a campaign. So I wanted to know the government, how it works. That's why even actually when I went to study, I studied something which was called government, political science. And when I studied it, I went back and told my father that I think this was just an excuse for you to tell us that you don't have, you were putting blame on the government. So, which is very good. It's a good way of trying to balance this thing. So the book actually tells the history of Kenyan politics, the history of Raila Odinga, in my own opinion, the history of how we got to, and one of the most matrix politics he has ever played, biggest political bandwagon Raila ever organized, called Pentagon. And you know, Pentagon is where William Ruto, Najib Balala, Norman Nyaga, Musalia Mudavadi, they formed that. Actually, that Pentagon is like a university of politics, because everyone who was there is somehow right now contributing in Kenyan political development in one way or other. So I can attribute Raila as the teacher of politics in this country. And I can say that Moi was the professor. He was the head of dean. It's like a dean. So right now we have Hustler, who is William Ruto. Is going to be the inventor of something. He has invented something. He is the bridge between the freedom, is the bridge between Raila Odinga's type of politics and another. He is starting his own brand of politics. You know, I will attribute Raila's politics as a social, there's something that he was fighting for there, which is, Raila is fighting for freedom. He wants all Kenyans to be the same. You get it? So now we are getting into a version of politics of someone who wants Kenyans to earn the same, Kenyans to live the same life, Kenyans who are below to come on top of the table.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room the only way to start your day.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Nizu. I'm Dennis Oseto. As the Supreme Court judges begin hearing the presidential petitions filed before it, it has ordered a recount of presidential votes in 15 polling stations across the country. The exercise is scheduled to begin this afternoon at an undisclosed location and will take 48 hours to scrutinize the votes. The exercise is expected to end tomorrow at 2 p.m. and a report filed in court.
In respect of the polling stations, our position should be that if it has been described as a polling center, then the order would relate to all the polling stations in that center.
Some of them are actually polling centers as opposed to polling stations. So we wanted to get a clarification as to whether where you indicate a name that refers to a polling center, then it as of necessity also means that we are talking about ballot boxes from the center and not from the polling station.
It is polling stations. Following Maina Kiai, anything to be done must begin from the polling station. So where there's a reference to Belgut polling center, it refers to the polling station. So again, that should be the reference that you're talking about. So let's follow that direction.
Each party shall be represented by 2 agents during the exercise, and they shall at times be under the supervision of the Registrar of the Supreme Court and her staff. The Registrar shall file her report by 5 p.m. on September 1st and avail copies to all parties. Now, the Supreme Court of Kenya wants the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission to provide access to election infrastructure that was used in the August 9th election for scrutiny and review. The Apex Court made the order in light of applications made by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running with Martha Karua. In their prayers, Raila and Karua told the court that the IEBC systems had been infiltrated by unauthorized persons and were therefore not secure so as to deliver a free, fair and credible, transparent, accurate and verifiable election.
On the question of supervised or read-only access, the ruling was specific. It is not read-only access. It is supervised access. So when you send your IT people to the servers, the IBC will understand it is supervised access, which is quite different from read-only access, which was the 2017 situation. So please allow them supervised access, which has a different meaning in IT language.
Now, the U.S. government is impressed by Kenyans for holding peaceful election on August 9th as it affirms its neutrality. The U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Meg Whitman, stated that the process has so far been peaceful. Whitman, who made a first tour outside Nairobi to visit U.S. Embassy staff heading critical U.S. programs and investments in the lakeside city of Kisumu, says the U.S. in all countries with presence has not interfered with the host elections. Whitman says neutrality implies that they don't dictate the outcome of the country's election but only remains as an observer.
By the Kenyan process so far, the elections were held peacefully. The country seemed to be united around following the process. And every candidate, as I understand in Kenya, has the legitimate right to file a grievance with the Supreme Court. That was done peacefully and thoughtfully. And so now we all await for this September 5th adjudication by the Supreme Court. And so I think we are, as I said, impressed by the process thus far and how both candidates have tried to follow the appropriate processes.
Whitman also pledged to expedite U.S. visa processing to help clear a backlog of pending applications.
Have been building staff, and I have also done some work with our team in Nairobi to see if we can't improve the visa backlog situation. It's unacceptable. As I said at my very first press conference, it's unacceptable for university students, for people trying to attend medical and health conferences around the world. We will do better, and it is one of my top priorities to reduce the backlog as soon as possible. So I recognize the problem, and we're working hard to fix it.
And the new generation number plates rolled by government have been touted as a step in the right direction in efforts to combat illegal duplication and falsification of vehicle identification numbers. Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i says the plates will be easily identifiable by law enforcement agencies, making it clear to track any vehicle and gather data about the ownership of the origin of the vehicle.
You'll notice that each one of the number plates is now going to have a serial number, and there will be correspondence between the serial number and the chassis number. So if you know, there are cases where if my friends from the police were here, they will tell you, arrest our fellow driving a Range Rover, and the number plate is actually registered as number plate for a truck. And we are going all that kind.
This is News Web. Dennis Assetto. Good morning.
The following takes place between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislators are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi la Wokovu is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well. No, you to Jeshi la Wokovu.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, takes a break today. But don't you worry, normal programming will resume as soon as possible. In the meantime, stay tuned to enjoy pre-recorded conversations with some of our past guests, reflecting on the big issues of the day with penetrating insights into the realms of politics, policy, business and culture. Feel free to share your feedback at SpiceFM KE across all...
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Again.
Again, yes, correct. Yeah.
So, as the NCIC, you've been running a national campaign on election bila noma, saying Penda Jirani, let's all maintain peace, elections come and go, let's observe peace and quiet during this period. It's been 14 days since we went to the polls. What is your observation so far? Have we maintained the peace or have we not?
Yeah, I think by and large, Kenyans have maintained the peace, and I really want to laud even the media, including the Standard Media Group, because we ran together a campaign called Election Bila Noma Penda Jirani, where we went across the country telling Kenyans the importance of good neighborliness, the importance of them keeping peace. And I want to say in this election, Kenyans have demonstrated that we can actually cast our votes and maintain peace. They have also demonstrated that our democracy has matured, and the political leaders who dissented the outcome of the presidential elections shows the right route, which is to go to court And I want to commend both the President-elect William Ruto and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, because they did make statements, especially a day before the announcement of the results, where they called upon Kenyans to maintain peace, to uphold good neighborliness. And I think that one contributed also to the calm that we currently experience across the country. So I will say it's been a triumph of the spirit of the Kenyan people. They have demonstrated once again that they can actually go beyond the tribal and identity-based divisions that usually come around politics. And I would want to say that has also been tested, because the behavior of the political leaders and political supporters at Bomas, especially around the time the results were being announced, was a test to the people of Kenya, because they were watching it. They were trying to start some form of hostility, or maybe even create conditions that can make Kenyans rise against each other. And I'm glad that the people of Kenya did not buy that kind of behavior. They did not get into sucked into that kind of action. And that is why it is a triumph for us as an institution. With all the partners that we worked with, we say, so far, we've delivered the peace that we wanted. We have had elections bila noma. We also had announcement of presidential elections bila noma. And we believe, moving to the Supreme Court, we shall resolve this issue through the constitutional and legal means that are given in our constitution. And we do expect that once the Supreme Court delivers its verdict, that should be the end of the dispute around elections, and Kenya should move forward.
Commissioner, do you think there has been a graduation? I mean, obviously, looking at, the time within which NCIC has been in operation, for example, and around elections when we see disputes, do you think there has been a graduation from how people felt and expressed that feeling, unfortunately, in violence, until the time that we see now? Has there been a maturity in the way in which people act, or is there exhaustion?
I think the 2007 and 2008 experience in Kenya was a wake-up call for most citizens. There are citizens and people who still have the scars of that particular period. And as a country, we promised ourselves that never again shall we go that route. Of course, our elections continue to be seen within the prism of violence and tension. This particular time, the reason why I think we got the peace we needed during the election is because we had all stakeholders, the media, government entities, civil society, community groups. All of them started early enough to speak about the need for peaceful elections, and also to encourage different groups not to be incited or manipulated by political groups or divided according to their ethnic identities. So that collective effort by different institutions and the fact that it started early is what I will say made these elections substantially peaceful. And also the fact that the approaches we adopted this time, the peace caravan, the road shows, the peace actors for the first time went to the people the same way politicians go to the people. So it was a campaign about vote for peace, keep your neighbor, respect each other, tolerate your political differences, and so on, the same way politicians were looking for their own vote. In fact, I remember when we were coming from one of the road shows at the airport in Eldoret, one of the politicians from one of the formations told me that you, NCIC, and people were talking about peace are going to create many spoiled votes because there are Kenyans who will go and look for somebody called peace to vote for them.
To vote for peace.
To vote for peace. But I told them that we often take for granted the fact that we need this peace, and it's only when you lose peace that you realize the importance of peace.
Yes.
And I think the message we took to the people of Kenya, and I could feel in all the roadshows and the interactions we had with the groups that the people were listening and they were connecting with the message that we took to them. I also want to say that the fact that coalition building around communities and ethnic identities took center stage in these elections, where if you go to Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, One Kenya Alliance, the distribution of the political leaders and the elite in those camps cut across different ethnic identities and also different parts of the country.
Yeah.
So in a way, the crafting of coalitions during campaigns more or less recognizes the problem Kenya has. And that is why there was an emphasis about Kenya Kwanza, One Kenya, Azimio la Umoja, Muungano. You have all those things. What we are hoping is that apart from now collecting different leaders to form the coalitions, which help to neutralize, because you could not say this is for this tribe. You had Kikuyus in almost all the coalitions. You had Luos in almost all the coalitions, Luyas and so on. That one helped to distribute the problems of identity across, and it contributed to not categorizing one particular coalition as belonging to one community or to one part of the country. So we are hoping that since the naming of the coalitions and the formation of these groups around ethnic groups and regions is what has happened, we hope even in terms of whoever takes over, the policies will actually prioritize the need to build a cohesive nation, to make sure that Kenya now grows from being seen as a collection of tribes to being a country that everybody is proud of and people are patriotic and everyone is included, just the same way they included everyone in forming the coalitions.
Yeah. I'm also hearing you say then that NCIC cannot do this alone. Previously, it was, look, if something is going amiss in the country, NCIC, you must handle this. Somebody said something at a rally over the weekend. NCIC then must come in too. But from what you're saying, then NCIC can be there as a commission, but everybody then who is an interested party has to be an interlocking system, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, the challenge of creating peace and building cohesion in any nation cannot be done by one single institution. And that is one thing we recognized at the beginning as NCIC when we were appointed in 2019, that to deliver a peaceful election in Kenya will require, of course, the leadership from NCIC, the coordination, but everybody else has to put some contribution to it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, for especially the Kenyan media this time, I am sure most of you did not make a lot of money in those peace processes that we had, because it was also your contribution to ensure that we have a peaceful election. If you go to the communities, we were able to set up community structures, even standby structures now as we speak, where if there is a dispute, they are able to respond at that level.
Yeah.
Because if you operate from the national level as NCIC does, sometimes the time of responding to an incident is undermined by the fact that you are actually not available near enough to respond to it. So by the time you get there, that incident has grown, it has spread in terms of from one village to the next, from one group to the next, and that becomes more complicated. So it is true, not one single institution can deliver peace, not one single institution can create the level of cohesion we require in the country. It requires all of us to work in synergy and in partnership, as we did in this particular election, for us to get it. So it is true, it's not NCIC alone which can do it. We are there to provide the coordination, to provide the leadership required, but we will pull other institutions to support us, as we did in these particular elections.
Talk to us about what has happened in the various communities where, prior to the election, there were some skirmishes, some flare-ups of violence, which many observers were saying is linked to the election. Let's say Marsabit, some parts of Isiolo, some parts of Lamu, some parts of Kerio Valley, where there were all these allegations, or let's say reports, that maybe what is happening here is some form of voter suppression or some form of just voter realignment. What happened around this time when the voting took place?
First of all, in all situations of conflict, and especially in the Rift Valley region and parts of Kenya, what you realize is that in places where communities have had unresolved grievances, either because of previous clashes between themselves, or because of election-related issues or concerns around questions of land, where they have not been resolved substantively. During elections, those unresolved community grievances become the proxy the politicians use to advance their political campaign. They will go into the communities and remind them that your land was taken by this community. During this time, we fought, there was violence, your people were killed. So that alone is always something we are wary as an institution, that if there is an ongoing conflict or unresolved grievances that pre-exist the election, that one is going to be used for mobilization by those political leaders who will want to incite ethnic tensions in order for them to get the votes. The second dimension to conflict and politics is in places like you've mentioned, like Marsabit, where you definitely have a conflict that has been ongoing almost for many years now, and in other places. So where there is an ongoing conflict, and that conflict has identity issues, either clan or tribe, obviously during elections, what the politicians do is to create conditions for violence, either for their opponents not to vote or to disrupt the process of voting in order for that particular process to favor one of the candidates. So we've seen that in many places across the country. In others, they will even create violence, like, for example, in Samburu North, where perhaps the swing vote will come from a particular community. Then the political leaders who believe they will not be voted by that particular community invest in violence so that that swing vote disappears or is significantly reduced in a way that will not affect the dynamics of or the outcome of the elections. So we have all those the dimensions to the question of violence, conflict, and elections. And it even becomes more problematic when now you've got illicit small arms and light weapons, for example, in the north region of the country or in northeastern and parts of the place like Isiolo and Marsabit. Because that's where now also the criminal element creeps in, and those who have the guns utilize the void that comes during elections to advance their criminal activities and whatever commercial interest they may have. So it's a very complex relationship when you talk about politics, violence, and elections.
From your analysis of this particular election, did you see it impacting the turnout and then also maybe subsequently the result?
Obviously, in a situation where there is violence or threats of violence, you will find some people will be scared to go and vote. So I will say the response to your answer to your question is yes, there must have been some suppression of some kind. Whether it is significant enough to have altered the outcome of the elections or not, that one is now something we can all interrogate going forward. But I also want to say that the voter turnout was by and large low across the country. And we will have to interrogate why. But from where I sit, part of the reasons why we had this low voter turnout is because Kenyans were actually in a very bad state in terms of the economy. We've just come out of a very difficult period caused by COVID. The conditions of living and the standards of living people are suffering as we speak. And then also the fact that perhaps the holiday was not declared the day after elections. So if you do the calculation of somebody traveling from Nairobi to Kakamega to vote traveling on Monday to vote on Tuesday, and Monday was not a holiday, that also must have
and
impacted.
Wednesday is not a holiday.
And Wednesday is not a holiday. That must also have impacted on the voter turnout. So, and it's something maybe going forward we should find a way of doing, because there are people who live in the city but have to travel back to up country to cast their vote. And if there's no enough time for them to do that, and also considering the harsh economic conditions that currently exist, then that way they will say there's no point of going to do that. But it is something that we need to interrogate as a country, because we need at least over 70% of the registered voters to cast their vote are not as low as we experience in this particular election.
You know, this election, when we're looking at the maths, just looking at the number of registered voters and those whom, according to the IEBC, were eligible to vote, we found that those who didn't vote, in terms of just sheer numbers, were more. 7 or 7.9 million?
Yeah.
Meaning, if those who didn't vote voted, they would have actually been the ones who would have voted in a presidential elect.
Yeah.
Now, we ask the question, what does that tell us about not just who was declared the winner of the election, but what does it tell us about us and how it is we view our elections? Because if you're talking about, there's a term we refer to as a protest vote. A protest vote cannot get any louder. When a third of your population tell you we are really not participating in this, it says something. But the question I want to ask is this. If we look at our electoral process and everything that goes on within it, from the way I have heard you speak, to understand such processes, surely you must understand who the players are. It's a question that always arises. What is it that the Commission has done with regard to profiling and understanding who these players are? Because the violence doesn't happen on its own. And going forward, what is it that the Commission plans to do to ensure that these individuals are actually brought to book?
Yeah, I think the question of voter apathy and the related one of the low voter turnout is obviously a concern to our institution as it is to other agencies in the country. During the election Bila Noma campaign that we carried out, we were actually arguing that citizens should know that going for elections is their civic duty and they need to exercise it. Secondly, we were very emphatic that when you have a low voter turnout, or even when people display voter apathy, it can actually be a threat to peace and stability. Because as you've said, if we had more people vote, perhaps the margins between the two presidential candidates will not have been as close as we came to see when the results were declared. So going to vote actually increases the chances of every citizen making their voice and their vote to count. And once you do that, even if there is a tie or a problem arises, you will realize that at your own personal level, you did cast your vote. So what we want to emphasize is the citizens must know that these 5 years you are given every year to review the kind of leaders you have is a very important opportunity that's given to citizens to elect their new leaders who can transform society in a manner in which they promise in terms of their campaigns and policies. And it's a very serious thing. There are people who like joking that elections should not be a serious thing, put it in your ranks. But it is a very serious thing because that is the opportunity for you as a citizen to critically examine the people who are presenting themselves for elections from the MCA to the president level and see which one of them can actually has a better agenda for you for the next 5 years. If you make it a joke, then we can actually get jokers ascending to office. And we've seen it in the past where people who do not deserve to be leaders ascending to office because those who are serious either take politics as something they are not supposed to involve in. And the citizens also just vote on the basis of the euphoria that the candidate has generated as opposed to the content of what the candidate has for the people. So going forward, we will emphasize the importance of political education, voter education, because everything that happens now, between now and 2027, will be determined by those we have elected as MCAs, will be determined by those who have been elected to the Senate, National Assembly, and even the President, because they are the ones who will generate or to convert their manifestos into policies and then policies into programs. And if they are not they are not good people, if they are not people who have a better agenda for the country, then the country will suffer and all of us will suffer. So elections is a very important thing. That's my message to the people of Kenya. And as I said, going forward, as a commission, we will keep emphasizing the importance of citizens participating in all electoral processes and in all electoral phases, not just the voting alone, even during campaigns and so on and so forth. And I just want to also to say another observation is when the new constitution was promulgated in 2010, the logic was that if you have 47 devolved entities where resources are devolved, it will reduce the appetite for the presidency. I think the last two elections demonstrate to us that that appetite has actually heightened. It hasn't reduced. And that means we may need to find out why devolution did not increase the appetite for people to campaign and fight over seats at the county level. And we still have this obsession with who becomes president, and sometimes becomes a do or die thing. So that is another observation that we've been able to see. And it tells you that either the 10 years of devolved governance did not impact substantially to the people of Kenya, or perhaps the 10 years, the leaders who have been there did not pay attention to the fact that they actually have the ability to change the lives of the people and develop those communities in a way that they will no longer be bothered about who becomes president. But it's a question that needs to be interrogated because presidential elections remain our threat to
big
peace.
Thing.
Yeah.
I think it's the latter, Commissioner. I think if many of this, by the time we were promulgating the Constitution, we had national leaders who are still in existence, and they still believe that their next big seat for them is a presidential seat. Now imagine if those national leaders, if Kalonzo had gone for governor of Kitui or Raila had gone for governor of Siaya, then they'd have changed the whole focus from the presidency. But as long as they're still there, and you see they are the leaders that we follow. Anyway, let's talk about this after we come back from the break. It's 27 minutes to 10. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. This week is that week when we are celebrating our birthday. From the 20th of August, for the entire week, we are looking back into the 3 years that SpiceFM has been on air and saying thank you. Thank you to our colleagues. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners. Everybody who has contributed to us being on air for 3 years successfully so. Yeah?
Indeed.
Unawapatia keki? Wewe sasa, wewe kama
Me,
ndu.
nangoja cake.